Jack Pearson never intended to leave Earth. He certainly never imagined he would become the most feared human in the galaxy, or that alien species would whisper his name with a mixture of awe and terror. But fate has a strange way of pulling people down unexpected paths. The day Earth joined the Galactic Confederation should have been a moment of pure celebration. After decades of careful first contact and diplomatic negotiations, humanity had finally earned a seat at the interstellar table. Jack, a former Marine with 8 years of combat experience and 3 more in diplomatic security, had been selected to join the protection detail for Earth's first ambassador to the stars. "Just keep your head down and follow protocol," his supervisor had told him during the briefing. "These aliens have been doing this for thousands of years. We're the newcomers here." Jack nodded, his face revealing nothing of his thoughts. At 34, his brown hair was already showing traces of gray at the temples. His face, while not handsome in the conventional sense, had a certain steadiness to it. Blue eyes that missed nothing, a jaw that seemed permanently set with determination. He wasn't tall by human standards, just under 6 feet, but his body had the compact strength of someone who had spent years honing it into a practical tool. The journey to Nexus Prime, the neutral diplomatic hub of the Confederation, took 3 weeks in the alien vessel provided for Earth's delegation. Jack spent most of that time studying. He memorized the basic protocols for 17 different species, learned the layout of the diplomatic quarter where they would be staying, and practiced using the universal translator until its strange delays no longer threw off his reactions. "You're taking this awfully seriously," said Eric Powell, another security officer who had found Jack reviewing building schematics late one night in the ship's common area. Jack shrugged. New environment, unknown threats. Better to be overprepared. "The Confederation has existed for 12,000 years without us," Eric laughed. "I don't think they need our help with security." Jack didn't argue, but he kept studying. Something about the briefing materials bothered him. The Confederation presented itself as a perfect harmony of species, yet he noticed patterns in the Yao, historical documents, subtle power struggles, unexplained changes in leadership, diplomatic language that hinted at conflicts just beneath the surface. Nothing obvious, nothing he could point to directly, but enough to make the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Nexus Prime was exactly as overwhelming as Jack had expected. A massive space station larger than Manhattan, it housed permanent embassies for over 50 species and temporary accommodations for hundreds more. The architecture was a bewildering mix of styles, with gravity that subtly changed as you moved between sectors designed for different biological needs. The Earth delegation was given modest quarters in the new species integration section, diplomatic language for, "We don't fully trust you yet." Jack took his place in the security rotation without complaint, standing silent guard during endless introductory meetings between Ambassador Lisa Hart and representatives from various Confederation species. Most of the aliens viewed humans with polite curiosity. Some seemed dismissive. A few were openly hostile. "Your species achieved space travel through combustion," a tall, spindly representative from the Murdani Collective asked during one reception, multifaceted eyes blinking in what the briefing materials suggested was amusement. "How resourceful." Ambassador Hart handled these interactions with practiced grace. Jack simply watched, cataloging each species' body language, noting which representatives clustered together and which remained apart, which seemed to hold more influence when they spoke. The big event, the reason they had come to Nexus Prime, was the Confederation Centennial Summit, held once every 100 years to renew treaties and address major galactic concerns. Earth's invitation was largely symbolic. They would have no voting power yet, but physical presence at the summit was considered the first step toward full Confederation membership. The summit was held in the Grand Assembly, an enormous circular chamber with seating arranged in concentric rings. The innermost circle was reserved for the oldest and most powerful species. At the very center sat the Galactic Emperor himself, Zorvex, ruler of the Confederation for over 9 centuries. Jack had studied the Emperor's file carefully. Zorvex belonged to the Scifistories, one of the founding species of the Confederation. They were long-lived, physically unimposing, with skin that seemed to shimmer like the surface of a soap bubble. The Emperor appeared almost fragile, with elongated limbs and a head that seemed too large for his body. But according to the briefing, his species possessed formidable psychic abilities and technological advantages that had kept them in power for millennia. The Earth delegation was seated in the outermost ring as befitted their status. Jack stood at parade rest behind Ambassador Hart's chair, scanning the chamber continuously. Something felt wrong. The security presence was impressive. The Emperor's personal guard of 12 Thalaxian warriors, enormous reptilian creatures with natural armor and reflexes supposedly faster than any human could match. Each major species had their own security details as well. The chamber had been swept for weapons and threats. But Jack couldn't shake his unease. His eyes kept returning to a service door slightly to the left of the Emperor's position. According to the schematics he had studied, it led to a maintenance corridor that connected to several other parts of the station. The door was guarded but only by a single Confederation security officer who seemed more ceremonial than alert. The summit began with ritual greetings in dozens of languages. Jack tuned out the words, focusing instead on the movement patterns in the room. 3 hours into the proceedings, during a speech by the Vordax trade minister, Jack noticed a slight shimmer near that service door, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. He didn't think. He moved. Later, analysts would review the security footage frame by frame, trying to understand how a human had spotted what the Confederation's advanced sensors had missed. How he had crossed 70 meters of crowded assembly floor in 12 seconds. How he had reached the assassin before the Emperor's vaunted Thalaxian guards had even registered the threat. The would-be killer was using some kind of active camouflage technology. Jack couldn't see them clearly, just the distortion of light that betrayed their presence. But he didn't need to see. He launched himself in a flying tackle, colliding with a solid invisible form just as it raised what appeared to be an energy weapon. The blast meant for the Emperor went wide, striking the ceiling. Jack and the assassin crashed to the floor together. He felt limbs that were definitely not human thrashing beneath him, stronger than he had anticipated. Something sharp slashed across his arm, but he maintained his grip, slamming what he hoped was the attacker's weapon arm against the floor repeatedly until he heard something crack. The camouflage failed, revealing a writhing insectoid creature with too many limbs and compound eyes filled with cold hatred. Jack had never seen this species in any of the briefing materials. The Thalaxian guards reached them seconds later, hauling the assassin away with surprising roughness. One of them pulled Jack to his feet with a grip that threatened to crush his shoulder. "Stand down, human," the guard growled, voice like stones grinding together. But then another voice spoke, high and melodic, yet somehow cutting through all other sound in the chamber. "Bring him to me," said Emperor Zorvex. And that was how Jack Pearson, who never intended to leave Earth, found himself standing before the ruler of 1,000 worlds, with the blood of an unknown alien species staining his regulations suit, about to receive an offer that would change the course of human history in the stars. The Imperial Palace on Celestis was unlike anything Jack had ever seen. It wasn't a building so much as an entire moon that had been hollowed out and transformed into the Emperor's home. Massive crystal spires rose from the surface, catching the light of the nearby gas giant and sending rainbows dancing across polished stone walkways. Gravity generators created perfectly balanced artificial weight that was just slightly lighter than Earth standard, making Jack feel as if he could jump twice as far as normal. It had been 3 weeks since the assassination attempt, 3 weeks since Emperor Zorvex had looked at Jack with those strange pupilless eyes and said, "This human shall join my personal guard." 3 weeks of frantic diplomatic calls between Earth's government and the Confederation Council as humans tried to understand if this was an honor or a hostage situation. In the end, no one could refuse the Emperor, not Earth's leaders who saw potential advantage in having a human so close to the seat of galactic power, not the Confederation Council, who protested that humans were too new, too untested for such a position, and certainly not Jack himself, who had been given approximately 6 hours to gather his belongings and say goodbye to his fellow security officers before being whisked away on the Emperor's personal vessel. Now he walked through gleaming corridors that had been designed for beings with very different proportions than humans. Some doorways were so tall he couldn't see their tops. Others were so narrow he had to turn sideways to pass through. The other guards, all Thalaxians, walked ahead and behind him, their scaled bodies making soft rasping sounds against their ceremonial armor. "The Emperor awaits in the Sunset Chamber," said the lead guard, Krav. His basic English was perfect, but spoken with a rumbling undertone that made Jack's teeth vibrate slightly. "You will be presented with your official uniform and weapons." Jack nodded. He had spent most of the journey to Celestis learning about his new role. The Emperor's personal guards were traditionally all Thalaxian, a species bioengineered thousands of years ago specifically for protection and combat. They were faster, stronger, and more durable than humans. Their scales could deflect small arms fire. Their eyes could see into spectrums humans couldn't perceive. And yet, the Emperor had insisted on adding Jack to their ranks, the first non-Thalaxian guard in over 500 years. The Sunset Chamber turned out to be a vast, circular room with one wall made entirely of crystal that faced the setting gas giant. The light turned the chamber blood red, casting long shadows behind the dozen or so aliens gathered there. The Emperor sat on a floating chair in the center, his bubble-like skin reflecting and refracting the crimson light. "Approach Jack Pearson of Earth," the Emperor said, his voice just as musical and penetrating as Jack remembered from the assembly. Jack walked forward and stopped at what he hoped was a respectful distance. No one had given him clear instructions. On Imperial protocol, should he kneel, bow, salute? He settled for a respectful nod, keeping his eyes on the Emperor. "You are confused by your presence here," Zorvek said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, Your Imperial Majesty," Jack admitted. "I'm a standard security officer. There are thousands like me on Earth. I don't understand why you would want me as a guard when you have the Thalaxians." A sound like wind chimes came from the Emperor. Laughter, Jack realized. "Precisely why you are here," Zorvek said. "You see yourself as ordinary. Yet you spotted my would-be assassin when all our technology and all the Thalaxians' enhanced senses failed. You moved without hesitation. You neutralized a Zalari infiltrator, one of the deadliest assassins in the galaxy, with nothing but your body as a weapon." Jack blinked. "I just reacted, Your Majesty. Basic training." "Basic training," repeated the Emperor, those strange wind chime notes in his voice again. "Captain Krav, please demonstrate for our new colleague why his actions were so remarkable." Krav stepped forward, towering over Jack by at least 2 feet. The Zalari assassin was using void tech camouflage, a technology that bends light and masks heat signatures. It is undetectable to most species, including my own. Yet you saw it. "I didn't exactly see it," Jack explained. "I noticed a distortion, like heat waves." "Impossible," said one of the aliens standing to the side, a tall, willowy being with pale blue skin. "Human eyes lack the receptors to detect such subtle variations." Jack shrugged. "I don't know what to tell you. I saw something move that shouldn't have been moving. The human is either lying or was simply moving randomly and got lucky," said another alien, this one short and stocky with what looked like metal implants embedded in its face. The Emperor raised a long-fingered hand, and the chamber fell silent. "Jack Pearson does not lie," Zorvek said with absolute certainty. "I have seen his mind. Humans have something remarkable, a form of pattern recognition that works on instinct rather than conscious thought. They call it gut feeling. It allowed him to piece together subtle clues that our technology missed." Jack felt uncomfortable with all these aliens discussing him as if he weren't present. But he remained silent, watching and learning. The court dynamics were already becoming clear. Who deferred to who spoke with confidence, who seemed resentful of the Emperor's decisions. "Your new uniform," the Emperor said, gesturing. A hovering tray floated toward Jack. On it lay a set of armor unlike the Thalaxians' scale-like protection. This was sleek, black, and appeared to be made of some kind of flexible material. "It is adapted to human physiology," Zorvex explained. Less protection than Thalaxian armor, but it will allow you to maintain your speed and agility, which I suspect are your greatest assets. Jack picked up the chest piece. It felt impossibly light. And your weapon, the Emperor continued. Another tray approached. This one held what appeared to be a simple metal baton about a foot long. A neural disruptor, explained Krav. Efficient and non-lethal, with adjustable settings for different species. Jack took the weapon, feeling its perfect balance. Thank you, Your Majesty. You begin your duties immediately, said the Emperor. You will shadow Captain Krav for 1 week to learn protocols. After that, you will take regular rotation in my guard detail. Jack nodded, still not entirely understanding why he was here. As if reading his thoughts, and perhaps he was, the Emperor spoke again. You wonder still why I have brought you here, when I have my Thalaxian guards. Let me be clear, Jack Pearson. The Confederation faces threats that our traditional defenses cannot counter. The Zalari assassin was but one example. I need different perspectives, different instincts. I need your human unpredictability. After the audience, Jack was shown to his quarters, a small but comfortable room adapted with human-sized furniture and Earth-normal gravity. As soon as he was alone, a communication panel on the wall chimed. Incoming secure transmission from Earth, announced a computerized voice. Jack accepted the call. Ambassador Lisa Hart's face appeared on the screen, looking tense. Jack, are you alone? She asked immediately. Yes, ma'am, he replied. Listen carefully, she said, lowering her voice. Your appointment has caused a diplomatic firestorm. The Confederation Council is in an uproar. Some species are demanding the Emperor reconsider. Others are suddenly very interested in establishing closer ties with Earth. I don't understand why, Jack said. I'm just a security officer. Lisa gave him a look that suggested he was missing something obvious. Jack, no human has ever been this close to the seat of power. The Emperor practically jumped over 1,000 diplomatic protocols to put you in his personal guard. You're not just a security officer anymore. You're a symbol, and symbols are powerful in interstellar politics. Jack absorbed this silently. Be careful, Lisa continued. You're a pawn in a game we don't fully understand yet. Watch your back, especially around the other guards. Not everyone is happy to have a human in their ranks. After the call ended, Jack sat on the edge of his bed, turning the neural disruptor over in his hands. A pawn in a game he didn't understand. It wasn't a comfortable position, but it wasn't entirely unfamiliar either. In the Marines, you often carried out missions without knowing the full strategic picture. But one thing Jack knew for certain, he needed to learn the rules of this new game, and fast, because pawns were usually the first pieces sacrificed. 6 months passed quickly on Celestis. Jack settled into a routine that would have seemed impossible a year ago. He stood guard during imperial audiences, accompanied the Emperor on visits to the palace gardens, and patrolled the endless hallways of the moon-sized residence. He learned to recognize dozens of alien species on sight, memorized hundreds of security protocols, and slowly earned something like respect from the Thalaxian guards. Captain Krav remained cold but professional. The others followed his lead, neither welcoming Jack nor actively working against him. They accepted his presence as they would accept a new weapon or a change in the patrol schedule, something to be adapted to, not questioned. The wider imperial court was a different matter. Diplomats, nobles, and officials from across the Confederation visited regularly, and nearly all reacted with surprise or dismay when they saw a human among the Emperor's personal guards. Some pretended not to notice. Others made a point of keeping their distance from Jack, as if he carried some contagious disease. They fear what they do not understand, the Emperor told Jack during one of their increasingly frequent private conversations. Zorvex had taken to summoning Jack for what he called cultural exchanges, asking endless questions about Earth and human behavior, while sharing carefully selected information about Confederation history. What's not to understand, Your Majesty? Jack asked. I'm just doing my job. The Emperor's skin rippled with those colors that Jack had learned indicated amusement. You underestimate yourself, as always. Do you know that reports about you have been filed by 17 different diplomatic missions? That there are ongoing debates in the Confederation Council about the wisdom of allowing a human in such a sensitive position, Jack frowned. Seems like an overreaction. Perhaps. Or perhaps they see something in your species that even you do not fully appreciate. The Emperor gestured toward a holographic display that appeared in the air between them. Would you care to review the latest intelligence briefing? I value your perspective. This was new. Normally only Krav and the senior intelligence officials reviewed such information with the Emperor. Jack stepped forward, studying the swirling symbols and images. These reports are about border activity near the Zalari Dominion, Jack noted, recognizing the sector maps. The Zalari, the same species as the assassin he had stopped, were longtime rivals of the Confederation, though there had been an uneasy peace for decades. Indeed, 3 outposts have gone silent in the past month. The War Council believes the Zalari are testing our defenses, preparing for a possible incursion. Jack studied the patterns, frowning slightly. The attacks don't make sense if they're Zalari. The Emperor tilted his head, the equivalent of a raised eyebrow. Explain. Based on what I've studied of Zalari tactics, they always hit communications first, then power systems, then life support. These attacks destroyed the defense systems first but left communications intact long enough to send distress calls. And the pattern is too regular. Every 8 days, 1 outpost, moving in a straight line along the border. Jack pointed to the map. Zalari prefer unpredictable patterns. This looks more like someone wanting us to know they're coming, almost like... He paused, hesitant to contradict the War Council's assessment. Continue, the Emperor urged, like someone trying to make it look like Zalari, but they don't know Zalari tactics well enough to be convincing. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then the Emperor made a gesture and the holographic display expanded to show more data. Your analysis matches my suspicions, Zorvek said quietly. But the War Council is convinced. They are already preparing a retaliatory strike that could trigger open conflict with the Dominion. Jack's mind raced. A war between the Confederation and the Zalari would be devastating, potentially dragging in dozens of species, including humans. Earth had only just joined the Confederation. They weren't ready for an interstellar conflict. Your Majesty, who else would benefit from such a... Bah? The Emperor's skin darkened slightly, a sign of approval Jack had learned. Precisely the question, Jack Pearson. I believe... A loud alarm cut through the air, making Jack reach instinctively for his neural disruptor. Red lights flashed across the chamber walls. Emergency council session, the Emperor said, rising from his seat. The War Minister must have called for an immediate vote on the retaliatory strike. Jack fell into position behind the Emperor as they moved quickly through the palace corridors toward the council chamber. Krav and 2 other Thalaxians joined them, forming a protective diamond around Zorvex. The council chamber was in chaos when they arrived. 24 representatives from the most powerful Confederation species were shouting over each other. Holographic displays showed the attacked outposts and projected casualty figures from a potential war. Order, commanded the Emperor, his voice cutting through the noise like a knife. The chamber fell silent immediately. War Minister Valcor, explain your urgency. A massive being with gray, stone-like skin stepped forward. Majesty, we have confirmed Zalari energy signatures at all 3 attack sites. Their ships have been identified. We must respond swiftly and decisively before they strike again. And your recommendation? The Emperor asked. A coordinated strike against 3 Zalari military installations. The fleet is ready to move on your command. Jack stood silently behind the Emperor, watching the council members. Most nodded in agreement with Valcor. Only a few looked uncertain. Before I authorize such action, the Emperor said, I would hear all perspectives, including, he added, turning slightly, that of my human guard. A shocked murmur ran through the chamber. Valcor's stone face somehow managed to look outraged. Majesty, this is highly irregular. Security personnel have no place in strategic discussions, especially not a... He stopped himself, but everyone knew what he had been about to say. Especially, not a human. Nevertheless, I wish to hear his assessment, the Emperor said firmly. Jack Pearson, step forward and share your observations on the attack pattern. Jack's heart raced as he stepped to the Emperor's side. Dozens of alien eyes fixed on him with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. He cleared his throat and pointed to the holographic display. "With respect," he said, keeping his voice steady, "the attack pattern doesn't match historical Zolari tactics. There are several inconsistencies that suggest these might be false flag operations." He outlined his observations clearly and concisely, pointing out the tactical anomalies that contradicted known Zolari military doctrine. As he spoke, he noticed a few council members exchanging glances, some with growing concern, others with what looked like anger. When he finished, the chamber erupted again. "Preposterous," Valcor thundered. "Are we to take military advice from a primitive species that has barely mastered interplanetary travel?" "The energy signatures are confirmed, Zolari," insisted another council member. "What other proof do we need?" A slender insect-like being raised a limb. "Energy signatures can be falsified. I believe further investigation is warranted." The debate raged until the Emperor raised a hand. "We will delay the retaliatory strike for 24 hours while a special investigative team examines the human's theory. If evidence of falsification is found, we will identify the true culprit. If not, the strike will proceed as planned." Valcor looked like he wanted to object but simply bowed stiffly. As they left the chamber, Jack could feel the stares of the council members burning into his back. He had just publicly challenged the War Minister of the Confederation. Either he would be proven right, or he had just made a very powerful enemy, and somehow neither outcome seemed particularly good for his long-term survival prospects. Jack's suspicions proved correct. The special investigation team discovered that the energy signatures had indeed been falsified. The attacks were the work of a splinter faction within the Confederation itself, a group of weapons manufacturers and military contractors who stood to profit enormously from a war with the Zolari. The revelation sent shockwaves through the Confederation. 3 high-ranking officials were arrested, including one of War Minister Valcor's top aides. Valcor himself was cleared of direct involvement, but lost significant political standing. And Jack, the human who had prevented an interstellar war, became something of a reluctant celebrity. "I don't understand why everyone's making such a big deal about this," Jack told the Emperor during one of their meetings. "I just noticed a pattern. Anyone could have seen it." "But no one did," Zorvex pointed out. "Not the War Council, not our intelligence services, not even the Thalaxians. Only you." Jack shrugged uncomfortably. "Lucky guess." "Not luck. A different perspective. This is precisely why I wanted a human in my guard." The Emperor's skin rippled with thoughtful patterns. The Confederation has grown complacent. Species that have lived together for thousands of years begin to think alike, to share the same blind spots. You see with fresh eyes. 1 month after the false flag incident, Jack received a new assignment. The Emperor called him to a private chamber where Krav was waiting, looking even more serious than usual. "A situation has developed at the Arcturus shipyard," the Emperor explained. "Separatists from the Novan system have seized control of the facility and taken hostages. They demand political autonomy for their world." Jack had studied the Confederation's structure enough to know that this was an impossible demand. Member worlds could have significant self-governance, but formal separation was forbidden by the founding treaties. "The military response has failed," Krav said, his voice rumbling with what might have been embarrassment. 2 assault teams were detected and neutralized before they could enter the shipyard. "The Separatists appear to have anticipated our standard tactics." The Emperor fixed his strange, pupilless eyes on Jack. "I am sending you as my personal envoy to negotiate with the Separatists." Jack blinked in surprise. "Me? I'm not a diplomat." "Your Majesty." "Exactly," said Zorvex. "The Separatists expect another military assault or a high-ranking negotiator. They will not expect a human guard." Krav handed Jack a small data crystal. "This contains information about the shipyard layout and what we know about the Separatist forces. There are approximately 30 fighters, well-armed and apparently well-trained. They hold 22 hostages, including the shipyard director. Your official mission is to open a dialogue and buy time, the Emperor said. Your actual mission is to assess whether a peaceful resolution is possible, and if not, to take whatever action you deem necessary to secure the hostages and the shipyard. Jack understood the unspoken instruction. He was being sent in alone, without backup, to potentially neutralize 30 armed separatists. It was either a suicide mission or an extraordinary vote of confidence. "When do I leave?" he asked. "Immediately," said the Emperor. "A transport is waiting." The journey to Arcturus shipyard took 6 hours in a small, fast Imperial vessel. Jack spent the time studying the data crystal, memorizing the shipyard layout and reviewing what little intelligence they had on the separatists. They were mostly Novans, a humanoid species with pale skin and enhanced strength adapted for their high-gravity homeworld. Their leader was someone called Dren Korvik, a former Confederation military officer who had been discharged after questioning orders during a colonial dispute. Jack considered the similarities to human history. How many revolutions and rebellions had been led by former military personnel who felt betrayed by the governments they once served? This Korvik might be more reasonable than the Confederation believed, or he might be more dangerous precisely because he knew Confederation tactics. The shipyard came into view through the transport's viewport, a massive structure orbiting a lifeless moon, with berths for ships larger than anything Earth had ever built. Currently, those berths were empty. The separatists had cleared the area of all vessels except their own small craft. "Approaching Arcturus shipyard," announced the transport's pilot, a Murdani with multiple limbs that moved across the control panel with blurring speed. "They're hailing us." "Put them through," Jack said, straightening his uniform. He wore no armor, carried no visible weapons, just his neural disruptor concealed in an inner pocket. The Emperor had insisted he go in appearing non-threatening. Harsh voice filled the cabin. "Confederation vessel, identify yourself and state your purpose. This is Jack Pearson, personal envoy of Emperor Zorvex. I am here to discuss your terms." There was a pause then. "A human? The Emperor sends a human to negotiate?" The voice sounded more surprised than outraged. "I am authorized to speak on his behalf," Jack said simply. Another pause. "You may dock at Bay 12. Come alone and unarmed or we shoot down your transport." The Murdani pilot gave Jack a concerned look with 3 of his eyes while the others remained fixed on the controls. "Are you certain about this, sir? Our scans show significant weapons emplacements," Jack nodded. "Follow their instructions exactly, and if I'm not back in 24 hours, return to Celestis and inform the Emperor." Bay 12 was deserted when Jack's transport docked, but he knew he was being watched. He walked calmly from the ship, hands visible at his sides, face composed in what he hoped was a neutral expression. 2 armed Novans appeared from behind a cargo container, their pale skin almost luminescent under the bay's harsh lighting. "Stop there," one ordered. "Arms out to your sides." Jack complied as they approached and searched him roughly, finding and confiscating his concealed neural disruptor. "Follow us," the same guard said, giving him a slight push forward. "Korvik is waiting." They led him through the shipyard's main corridors. Jack mentally compared what he was seeing to the schematics he had studied. So far, everything matched. He counted security cameras, noted which sections appeared to be under heaviest guard, and tried to locate the hostages. The separatists had been smart. They had spread out their forces rather than concentrating them, making a single strike impossible. Dren Korvik waited in what had been the shipyard director's office. He was tall even for a Novan, with the characteristic pale skin and solid black eyes of his species. A jagged scar ran from his left temple to his jaw. "So," Korvik said as Jack was brought before him, "the Emperor sends a human to deal with us. I'm not sure if I should be insulted or intrigued." Jack met his gaze steadily. "I'm here to listen to your demands and find a peaceful resolution." Korvik laughed, a harsh sound. "There's only one peaceful resolution. Nova Prime becomes an independent system, free from Confederation control. We have suffered exploitation for 3 centuries while the core worlds prosper from our resources. You know the Emperor cannot grant full independence. Jack said calmly. But reforms are possible. Better representation, revised resource allocation, promises we've heard before. Korvik cut him off. No more. We have enough explosives planted throughout this shipyard to destroy it completely. The Confederation values this facility at over 1 trillion credits. Our freedom is worth more. Jack observed Korvik carefully. The Novan believed what he was saying, but there was something else. A tension in his posture, a flicker in those black eyes. Korvik was committed to his cause, but he was also afraid. Not of Jack, but of something else. Who's backing you? Jack asked suddenly. Korvik blinked, momentarily thrown off balance. What? This operation is too sophisticated for a small separatist group. Someone provided you with intelligence, weapons, explosives. Someone who wants to see the Confederation destabilized. The Novan leader's expression hardened. You know nothing, human. But Jack had seen enough to confirm his suspicion. This was connected to the false flag operations at the border. Someone was trying to fracture the Confederation from within. I think we both want to avoid unnecessary bloodshed, Jack said. Let me speak with the hostages, prove they're unharmed. Then we can discuss realistic compromises. What happened next would become the stuff of legend throughout the Confederation, though the official reports would be classified at the highest levels. Only the Emperor and a few others would ever know the full truth of how one unarmed human resolved the Arcturus crisis. 3 years passed since Jack first joined the Emperor's Guard. 3 years of growing influence and quiet accomplishments that gradually changed how the Confederation viewed humans. After the Arcturus shipyard incident, where Jack had somehow convinced the Separatists to surrender without bloodshed, the Emperor had promoted him from mere bodyguard to Imperial Security Advisor. Now he attended council meetings not as a silent protector, but as a respected voice in policy discussions. No one outside a small circle knew exactly what had happened inside that shipyard. The official story claimed Jack had negotiated a peaceful settlement. The unofficial rumors suggested something far more impressive, or terrifying, depending on who you asked. Some said he had single-handedly subdued all 30 separatists. Others claimed he had used some secret human ability to turn the rebels against each other. The truth was both simpler and more complex. Jack had recognized that Korvik and his followers were being manipulated by the same shadow faction that had attempted to start a war with the Zilari. He had provided evidence, turned key members of the group, and exposed the real puppet masters, a coalition of wealthy industrialists and disgruntled military officers seeking to reshape the Confederation under their control. Now, as Jack stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city of Celestis, he reflected on how far he had come from his simple security job on Earth. The moon's artificial atmosphere created a perpetual golden sunset that bathed the crystal spires in warm light. Below, preparations were underway for the Emperor's Millennium celebration, 1,000 years of rule, an almost incomprehensible span of time to human understanding. Deep thoughts, my friend? Asked a voice behind him. Jack turned to see Ben Carter, Earth's new military attaché, approaching with 2 glasses of what looked like champagne but was actually a much milder Celestari equivalent. Humans had learned the hard way that most alien alcohols were either too weak to feel or strong enough to be lethal. Just taking it all in, Jack replied, accepting the drink. Hard to believe it's been 3 years. Ben nodded. You're something of a legend back home, you know. The human who guards the Emperor. Children play games pretending to be you. Jack winced. That's disturbing. It's also useful, Ben said, his voice dropping lower. Your position has secured us trade agreements, technology sharing, military cooperation, things that would have taken decades to negotiate otherwise. Jack sipped his drink, saying nothing. He had become adept at keeping his own counsel, at listening more than speaking, skills that served him well in the imperial court. The real question everyone wants answered, Ben continued, studying Jack carefully, is why the Emperor chose you in the first place, and why the other species fear you so much. Before Jack could answer, if he had intended to answer at all, a soft chime signaled an incoming communication on his wrist device. He checked it and straightened immediately. The Emperor requests my presence, he said. We'll continue this conversation later. Ben nodded, watching thoughtfully as Jack walked away. The Emperor's private meditation chamber was rarely used for meetings, a perfect sphere suspended in the heart of the palace. It contained nothing but a single floating platform, where Zorvex sat cross-legged, his bubble-like skin reflecting the soft blue light that emanated from no visible source. Jack Pearson, the Emperor said, opening eyes that seemed to contain galaxies within them. The day approaches when all will understand why I chose you. Jack bowed slightly. Your Majesty? You have sensed it, have you not? The final move in a game that began before you arrived. Jack nodded slowly. He had noticed increased security concerns, subtle shifts in the behavior of certain council members, unusual fleet movements at the edges of Confederation space. There's going to be an attempt during the Millennium celebration, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes. The shadow faction you exposed at Arcturus was merely one branch of a much larger conspiracy. They have planned this for centuries, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Jack felt a chill despite the comfortable temperature. How can we stop it? The Emperor's skin rippled with colors Jack had never seen before. We will not stop it. We will let it unfold, partially. A controlled burn to flush them all into the open. That's extremely risky, Your Majesty. Indeed, which is why I need you to play the most important role. The Emperor rose from his platform, floating gently to stand before Jack. You have earned my trust, human. Now I will tell you why I truly selected you 3 years ago. The celebration spanned the entire moon. Billions of beings from across the Confederation attended in person, with trillions more watching via holographic transmissions. The Emperor appeared before them all in the Grand Plaza, a vast open space at the center of the capital city. His speech was brief but powerful, reflecting on a millennium of leadership and looking toward the future. Jack stood behind him as always, scanning the crowd with practiced eyes. The Thalaxian guards formed a perimeter, their scaled bodies gleaming in ceremonial armor. Everything appeared normal, yet Jack could feel the tension building, the calm before the storm. The attack, when it came, was both expected and surprising in its scale. Not 1 or 2 assassins, but dozens. Not just ground forces, but ships suddenly appearing in orbit, somehow bypassing the defense systems. Not just external threats, but several of the Thalaxian guards themselves turning their weapons toward the Emperor. What happened next would be recorded in Confederation history as the Millennium Miracle. In the chaos of explosions, weapons, fire, and screaming crowds, one figure moved with impossible precision. Jack Pearson, the human guard, seemed to anticipate every threat before it materialized. He disabled 3 traitorous Thalaxians in less than 5 seconds. He intercepted a neural disruptor blast meant for the Emperor, somehow redirecting it back to its source. He coordinated the loyal guards through an emergency communication system that somehow remained functional when all other networks went down. And through it all, his face remained eerily calm, as if he had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. 2 hours later, the crisis was over. The conspiracy, a coalition of noble houses that had plotted for generations to overthrow the Emperor and install a new form of government, was exposed and defeated. Their leaders were captured or killed. Their fleet was scattered. Their decades of planning undone in a single day. In the aftermath, the Emperor addressed an emergency session of the Galactic Council. Representatives from all Confederation species gathered, many still stunned by the day's events. Jack stood at the Emperor's right hand, now officially acknowledged as Imperial Security Director, a position created specifically for him. Today, you witnessed why I chose a human as my guard, Zorvex said, his voice carrying throughout the chamber. Many of you questioned my decision. Some mocked it, others feared it. All of you misunderstood it. The Emperor gestured to Jack. You see, humans as unpredictable, dangerous. You fear their capacity for violence, their strange instincts, their rapid adaptability. But you miss what I saw immediately. Their capacity for loyalty. Silence filled the chamber as the Emperor continued. I have ruled for a millennium by understanding the psychology of species. The Krell are physically powerful but hierarchical to a fault. The Murdani are brilliant but risk-averse. The Vordaks are proud but predictable in their responses. His gaze swept across the council. Humans are different. They evolved on a world that tried to kill them at every turn. They survived ice ages and asteroid impacts. They developed not one but thousands of fighting styles, each adapted to different threats. Their history is filled with violence, yes, but also with sacrifice, with individuals giving their lives for others, for ideas, for the future. Jack stood silently, his face revealing nothing as the Emperor placed a long-fingered hand on his shoulder. I chose Jack Pearson not despite being human, but because he is human. Because when all of you look at him, you see an unpredictable threat. But what I see is the most predictable force in the galaxy, a human who has given his loyalty freely, and who will die before breaking it. As the council session ended, Sam Miller, Earth's newly appointed Confederation representative, approached Jack. "So that's it?" Sam asked quietly. "The Emperor kept you close because he knew you'd be loyal?" Jack gave a small smile. "That's what he says." "And what's the truth?" Jack looked around the chamber, at the alien diplomats still watching him with wary eyes. "The truth is more complicated. The Emperor needs the Confederation to fear humans. A little. Fear brings respect, respect brings opportunities. And those opportunities have given Earth a place at the table we wouldn't have had for centuries otherwise." Sam studied him carefully. "Did you know this was his plan all along?" "Let's just say we came to an understanding," Jack replied. "The Emperor gets his loyal guard who keeps the other species cautious. Earth gets unprecedented trade and technology agreements. And I get..." He paused. "What do you get, Jack?" Jack Pearson, the human who guarded the Emperor, and who all the galaxy now feared, allowed himself a rare, genuine smile. "I get to make sure humanity never has to fight the kind of wars that defined our history. Sometimes the best way to prevent a fight is to make sure everyone thinks you'd win it."